Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our test of the Audeze LCD-1, the newest Audeze headphones with planar magnetic technology. These are the best headphones you can possibly buy. You should definitely go out and buy them because everybody says you should. Everybody, I mean those individuals who got the headphones for totally free, or those individuals who have never held the headphones in their hands and have no idea what they're talking about. And if that's what you really wanted to know to justify your purchase, you're welcome. However, for anyone else who actually does want to know whether these headphones perform according to the hype, keep listening. Today we're going to finalize our sound test by completing the treble response test. We've already done the bass, we did the mids, and now it's the treble. What we're going to do is we have 3 songs queued. Our 3 songs are Scherzo For X-Wings, Flight from the City, and New Light. And what we're going to try to find out is how these headphones reproduce the energy from certain very high-pitched brass, wind, string instruments in an orchestral mix like Scherzo, how the headphones reproduce piano like in Flight from the City, and how these headphones can reproduce detail like in New Light by Kazuki. So that is the idea. I have the headphones currently plugged into the Monolith DHX AAA desktop. We are at negative 25 decibels. We are going to start off with Scherzo For X-Wings, if I can find it. Here it is. And here we go. So at the very beginning, you have some brass instruments, and then the horns come in. There's a little bit of a muffled texture to the music. It sounds very closed off. It's almost like I'm listening to this song on normal, decent bookshelf speakers in a small room. There's no real soundstage. Very, very average soundstage. I don't hear any harshness at negative 25, so I'm going to increase to negative 20 decibels. We're at negative 20. I still don't hear any harshness, so I'll increase to negative 15. And that's as loud as I would want to take these headphones. This is almost close to my maximum listening volume for this song. So I could hear the bass, and it's getting really muddy. It's hard to distinguish. The horns come in, but the horns tend to meld a little bit with the other string instruments. Not the other string, but the string instruments. So you have the horn, the brass section, their tonalities when they're both playing at the same time basically become one, so the separation between the instrument sections it becomes a little bit harder. I mean, it sounds clear enough, but the problem I'm having is that because the soundstage is fairly narrow, average, you're not hearing group sets in left, far off left, close to center, off center, far off right. And that's not the presentation you get. Instead, everything sounds pretty much directly in line with your ear. So even though there's a left and right, there's no 3D effect. You can't really position where the instruments are. And part of the problem, I think, is because of the lack of soundstage. I didn't hear any harshness, even at negative 15, which is very loud for these headphones. I don't hear any harshness. I don't hear any peakiness, no ear pierciness, which is very good because this song, with some headphones, will present itself very harshly. If you have a Beyerdynamic headphone and you crank up the volume with a Beyerdynamic headphone with this song, you might be in for a hurt because these brass instruments just become ear piercing, like somebody's just stabbing your eardrums. The LCD-1 doesn't do that at all. Now there's 2 explanations. One can be, well, if it's fairly neutral, it's fairly flat. The other is it's rolled off, that the Audeze has purposefully tuned the treble response to be not as intrusive and taken it down. Now, if you go and look at the frequency response charts, doesn't matter which one you look at, whether it's from Audeze's official RAW, or it's the mini DSP from 571, or it's from Oratory's own, you can see that there seems to be a little bit of roll-off at the treble region. It's not neutral, it's not flat. So it's entirely possible that there's more of a roll-off than there is neutrality in the frequencies that are being reproduced from this particular song. Now let's go back a little bit to about midway, right around the time that the crescendo comes in. Here we go. What I want to know if there is separation amongst the instrument groups. And I could hear one brass section on the right, and I can hear the horn section on the left. So those two are separated fairly well. But when everything starts playing, and that's what I'm listening for, when everything is playing, can I distinguish individual group sets, or does it all just sound a little muddy? So here's what I've noticed. So I skipped ahead a little bit because there was a long period of silence. And I was going back and forth with this song. And what I wanted to know is, during the portions of the song, say around 1 minute, when all the instruments are playing, what is the effect that I'm getting? And here's what I hear. There is separation amongst the group sets, but it's not a hardline separation. What I'm hearing is a little bit of melding of those group sets, the brass, the wind, the percussion. Those instruments kind of rub shoulders with each other. Now that sounds fairly natural, right? I mean, if you're sitting at a concert, you're not going to get hardline separation. You're going to hear it interfering because that's what's happening. All those instruments are right there. It's not as if one was mixed in one room, then another was mixed in another room, and then somebody mastered them together in a particular way, very scientifically, and you can hear each different note or each different group set with a clear, definitive, hard line separation between them. So that's true. So the LCD-1 does, in fact, tend to be a little bit more realistic in that regard. The issue that I have is that the LCD-1 simply doesn't have any real soundstage, more than average. It doesn't have anything more than average. So it's average soundstage. When you get an orchestral mix, one of the things that tends to help, is if you can get a headphone with wide soundstage, you'll be able to get a little bit more sensation of depth, where the instruments are, the position of the instruments, and you'll be able to get a little bit better separation of the instruments. But the LCD-1 sounds closed off for this song. Now, these aren't closed off headphones. They don't sound claustrophobic, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they don't really have good soundstage. It's average at best. And with average soundstage, there's stuff that you're missing. So even though you're hearing the elements, you're not really hearing them distinctly. They're rubbing shoulders a little bit. And if you're the type that wants critical listening, if you're the type that wants to know, okay, I really enjoy listening to music, each element at a time, then you may not be happy with a headphone that doesn't really present hardline separation, even though that may not be natural, right? I concede it's not necessarily natural. But if that's the type of person you are, you want the slightly wider soundstage, or significantly wider soundstage, and you want to be able to hear each group set clearly and cleanly without having, the brushing shoulder effect, then the LCD-1 really doesn't seem to present that, at least not on this particular song. But let's keep going. Let's go to Flight from the City by Johan Johansson. Let's see how the headphones perform here. Here we go. I'm going to decrease the volume to -25. And what I want to hear is whether the piano has any odd reverberation. So there's this kind of this increasing note in the background, this high-pitched note that starts off around, I think, 15 seconds of the song, and it slowly builds up in volume. And once it hits around 20 seconds, you can actually hear it very clearly with the piano. And I picked it up at about 11 or 15 seconds, and I heard it distinctly around 20 seconds. Now, here's one of the things that happens with this song. Often headphones reproduce the keys being pressed down like a thump thump sound. So thump thump thump. You know, pressing down on the key, thump thump. You could hear the wood hitting the wood, thump. And I'm not getting that at all from the LCD-1. I don't hear that sound, even though that is indeed a micro detail in the mix. You hear it with a lot of headphones. The LCD-1 simply doesn't present it. It's just so subdued. It's such a roll-off of that bass region where that thump-thump comes in that you can easily miss it. Now, as far as the piano is concerned, it sounds like, you know, piano is being played in a medium-sized room. You know, it could be a large living room. There's no real sound stage here that would make me say, wow, this sounds like the piano is on stage in a theater. That's not the sensation at all. The micro detail of the person, of the pianist moving back and forth on his chair is also a little bit muffled. So this is one of the micro details I've talked about in this song many times. So there are a couple micro details. One, the thump of the piano keys being pressed. And then there's the movement of the pianist back and forth in his chair. And as he moves back and forth, you can hear the creaking. Now that creaking, oftentimes with very good headphones, with good detail retrieval, is immediately audible and it's distinct. It's a very crisp sound. The LCD-1 simply doesn't present it in that manner. So let's go back to 1 minute and 52 seconds and let's listen for that creaking. And I'll tell you when I hear it. Right there. So about 2 minutes and 1 second or so. There's that creaking. Now that creaking should have been apparent clearly well before 2 minutes. In fact, it happens 2 to 3 times before, near the beginning of the song. And I probably missed it because I was talking into the microphone. But here we are at 2 minutes, and it sounds muffled. So it's not a sharp sound, creaking. It's not something that's immediately audible. It's something that you could easily miss because of that muffled nature to it. So if we go back again, so let's go to about 157 and let's listen for it again. Yeah, it's just so muffled that you could easily miss it if you didn't know it was a part of that song. If I increase the volume to -20, okay, we're at -20, and let's go back and let's try this again. Now, obviously, this is a biased test at this point because I already know where it is, and I've pointed out several times. So the only purpose of this portion of the test, going back to it, is try to figure out how loud it is, how distinct that sound actually becomes with higher volume. -25 is loud enough for me to say, I probably wouldn't listen to the song any louder. That's how the mix is. -20 is something that's probably not wise to go to because that's too loud for most people with these types of headphones on this particular song. Be that as it may, I want to know if the character of that creaking sound changes at -20 decibels. So +5 gain here. Here we go, 1 minute, 58 seconds. No, it doesn't. So even though the piano gets louder and the string instrument, the cello gets louder, the creaking doesn't become less muffled. It's still muffled. And now that I know where it is, I can say, okay, so I know exactly where it is at 2 minutes. So 2 minutes and half a second, that's when it happens. So I know it's happening. And it's at -20 decibels, which is very loud. Now, if you didn't know that this detail was present in the song, as I said, you would miss it. So let's bring it down to -30 decibels. Okay? Because -30 decibels is probably a very quiet, pleasant mix. So let's go back to 1 minute and 50 seconds. Let's listen to how this song sounds at -30. And -30 is a very comfortable volume. You could easily wear this comfortably for hours, at least I can, without getting ear fatigue at this volume on this song. And you can easily miss it. It's so muffled, that creaking sound, that if you don't know where it is in the song, you never heard it before, you may not recognize it. It'll go by that fast. That's not something I think that would be a commendable trait for a headphone. If you're missing details, if their details are muffled for one reason or another, and you're calling yourself a mixing and mastering headphone, you're missing details. To each their own. Some people will not care. But if you're the type of person that's saying, I really want a critical listening headphone, and people are saying this is a critical listening headphone, then I want to know whether or not those micro details are present. And if they are present, how they're presented. So the micro detail is present. It's here in the LCD-1, but it's here in such a muffled way that you could easily miss it if you're listening to it at -30, which is a very comfortable semi-loud volume. If we go down even further, what if we go to -35 decibels? Okay, we're now at -35, and let's go back to 150 and listen. This is still fairly loud. I can hear myself speaking, but I can hear the song very clearly. Yeah, you can easily miss. It's so muffled, so quiet at comfortable listening volumes. I had somebody comment, a few people comment and say, you're crazy if you listen to these headphones, if you listen to any headphones at loud volume. Well, here's the thing. If you can't get the details out of a headphone at normal volume, quote, normal volume, you have to turn up the volume to max levels to get that detail out. That's not something unique here. I'm not saying something that's fresh off the printing presses. This is something that people do all the time. Individuals who don't have the quote best headphones are working with what they have, and the headphone simply doesn't produce the detail required. The drivers don't reproduce the detail required at comfortable listening volumes. Those people are going to have to crank up the power a little bit more to get those drivers to help reproduce the sound, the detail. So if you're constantly cranking up the volume, your mix is being thrown off course because it's being too loud at one point, too quiet at some others. And you really just want a headphone, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're a mixing and mastering artist or whatever, and you're looking for a headphone that can reproduce critical details, you want one that can produce critical details, whether it's at -35 or 30 or 20 or 25, it doesn't matter. You want something that can audibly reproduce the details. If it's so quiet at a comfortable listening volume that you might actually miss it, is that worthwhile for you? Your question to answer, not mine. I don't make these conclusions for you, but just pointing out these facts. So other than that, what about the piano sound? Now, the piano sounds fairly neutral as far as I can tell. I don't hear any spikiness. I don't hear any peakiness. No spike in the treble region. I don't hear any ear pierciness. There's no ringing sound, nothing like that. And in a way to compare, I would say look at the NDH-20, which has this claustrophobic sensation. It has this steely sound signature, almost steely sound signature, like you're in a metal container, a shipping container. The other side, also similar to it, is the DT-1770, which is so awful for this song that it really does have this very steely, almost grainy type sound effect. And neither is particularly accurate for this song. The LCD-1 doesn't have any sort of steely signature to it that I can tell with this song. But nor does it present this song as if you're listening to it with wide soundstage. It's like you're in a medium-sized room. And that's been consistent with all the tests we've done, the bass, the mids, and now here we are. All the songs that we've listened to, it's been the same thing. It's average soundstage at best. And when you have average soundstage and you have a bit of rubbing shoulders with other frequencies, and you have a lack of clear detail retrieval, you're not really getting critical listening at that point, in my opinion. The piano sounds good. Good meaning it sounds, the reverberation of the piano keys sounds fairly natural. So we're missing a few of the micro details, the thump of the piano keys being pressed down. That's so rolled off, you might miss it. The creaking of the chair as the person is moving back and forth on the chair is also a micro detail that can be easily missed. And if you don't miss it, it sounds muffled regardless. And those are issues that you may have to contend with. All right, so let's go to our last song, which is New Light by Kazuki. And in this song, what we do is we listen for the details. There are layers and layers and layers of detail. So some of the details are the person walking on dry grass. You can hear the crunch, crunch, crunch of his feet. There are kids playing in the background. There's the wind rustling through the tall grass. There's a piano. There's an acoustic guitar. And you have this synth music that ramps up about the middle of the song. Now, there are a couple of things here. Number one, the thing about the kids playing in the background. There are a lot of headphones that reproduce that sensation by just making it sound as if there's a lower volume to those kids playing. Really good headphones have this kind of 3D depth effect where it actually does give a sensation that the kids are somewhere in the distance in the background. You can hear them. It's not like they're quiet. It's not like somebody turned down the volume. It's instead the reverberation and the type of sound that is being reproduced by that frequency of those kids in the background really does sound like they're further away from you instead of just they're right next to you but toned down. So there's a bit of depth effect that can occur with some really good headphones. The person stepping on the grass. Last time I did this test, it was with the Focal Clear, and I counted the number of times I heard the steps, and I said it was 16. I think it was between the start and 1 or 2 minutes, something like that. 16 steps. And I had mentioned in that review that, oh my goodness, I had never heard that many steps. It was so crystal clear to me. Let's see how many steps I can count with the LCD-1. Okay, so here we go. Starting off with New Light, I'm going to bring up the volume to -25. Okay, here we go. So I hear the kids in the background. They sound fairly muffled. It's hard to hear them. I can hear the person walking on the grass. So there was a crunch. There's a singular crunch on the right ear cup and then a couple more on the left. I hear the piano and the guitar, but it sounds really super muffled. So the guitar frequency and the piano frequency are really melded. It has a more closed off sound effect than it does wide soundstage. And I'm not hearing a lot of the footsteps that should be present right now. I'm simply not hearing them. I'll increase the volume to -20. So I hear the guitar very clearly. Now the synth has come up, so the synth sound is playing. The synth sound is overwhelming the guitar easily. But there's still no harshness, no peakiness, no ear pierciness. So the treble is still controlled, rolled off. But the problem is that the guitar gets lost in the mix at this point. It's really hard to hear the guitar separated from the synth. It sounds pretty muffled. Okay, so let's go back, and what I want to do is count the number of steps I hear. So this is how we're going to do it. I got a -20, which is very loud. I wouldn't listen to this headphone any louder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down the volume a little bit to about -22. And the idea is I count the number of times I hear the person's steps crunch, crunch on the dry grass. And I'm only going to count the steps that I actually hear, not the ones that I know should be present, just the ones that I hear, okay? And we're going to do this for 1 minute. Here we go. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6. Seven, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so 1 minute in, and we have 10 footsteps. And it was really damn hard hearing anything beyond the first 3. And you might say, well, that's how it's mixed in. I'm telling you, that's not how it's mixed in. If you have a pair of headphones that actually does reproduce detail, like the Focal Clear, for example. I know we're talking about something that's like astronomically more expensive. Just hear me out. So we have a standard. How many crunching footsteps you should be able to hear within a given period of time. So within an X amount of time, you should hear 16. And here we are, and I'm struggling to hear them. So with the Clear, it was absolutely obvious when the steps happened. With the LCD-1, the opposite is true. That I'm listening to it, and I'm really struggling to hear it, and the vast majority of the time between 0 and 1 minute and 2 seconds is I'm trying to separate the steps from the bass frequency, the little rumble effect that's going on in the song, and it's really hard. That separation is incredibly difficult to do. So the first 3 steps, crunch, 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 that's obvious. It sounds fairly close, like the person's right next to me and then walking in front of me. Then after that, there should be many more steps, at least 13 more steps, and I'm not hearing any of them. Well, I'm hearing 7 more, but I'm not hearing them clearly. It was crunch, crunch, crunch. It was just so muffled that I didn't know whether or not to give it, count that. I did, because I would rather be on the safer side and say, yeah, I think that's what it was. But if you didn't know, if you don't know this song, if you haven't heard this song with headphones that do reproduce micro detail, you might just walk away thinking, oh, I heard 3 or 4 footsteps. That's all I heard. When in reality, there are at least, given period of time, 16 footsteps that should be absolutely clear. And it's not absolutely clear. Other than that, the piano sounds... it sounds a bit more claustrophobic on this song, despite the fact that this song is supposed to give you the effect that you're standing outside in a wide field. That's how you're supposed to experience it. In fact, you should get the sensation that this is a very wide-sounding song. But the LCD-1s are, as I said many times before, very, very average soundstage at best. And so you get that muddy experience from the guitar and the piano, and they overlap each other, so it's hard to separate them. When it's just one instrument playing, you don't really have a problem hearing it, obviously. But then when you have the synth music that chimes up and it comes to full volume, just about halfway of the song or so, and the guitar is playing, the guitar is overwhelmed by that synth. And you can hear the guitar, but it sounds really muddy. Like somebody wrapped that guitar in some sort of cloth or stuffed the inside of the cavity of the guitar, and that's the type of sound you get, really muffled. So you know it's a guitar, but that sounds a little muffled to me. That's the sensation throughout this one. Still no peakiness, no harshness, even at high volume, so that's good. But once again, I think that there is a roll-off for the treble frequency, which for some people is great if you want to really just sit there and listen to the music. But for other people might be a problem if you're trying to get actual neutral sound. You may not get really actual neutral sound. All right, so let's talk about conclusions. I've said this every video I've done with the LCD-1. They're good headphones. They're not hype headphones. They're not hype-worthy headphones. I don't hear the hype here. There are average soundstage. They provide decent separation of instruments for most songs, but they don't have hardline separation, meaning there's not a distinct separation between one group set and another group set, one instrument and another instrument. They don't provide clear separation of multiple vocalists when other instruments are also playing. They don't provide a wide soundstage. They have a muddied effect when there are multiple songs and you're listening to a bass instrument and you're listening to something that's higher energy, more closer to high mid-range, mid-frequency, and going into the treble region. You're going to get some muddied effect. Furthermore, the detail retrieval for these headphones is no better than average. No better than average. There are things that this headphone simply doesn't do a very good job of reproducing. The thump of the piano keys in Flight from the City, the creaking of the bench, the footsteps, the kids in the background, they sounded muffled instead of distant. The fact that when synth music comes up with the guitar playing, the guitar gets muffled and a little hard to hear. It sounds almost like you stuffed the cavity of the guitar with something. And all of that combined results in a mediocre sounding headphone. There's nothing spectacular here. What is the spectacular thing about this headphone? I don't understand. Now, when we start comparing other headphones to this price range, up to $500, because that's the standard people have set. Under $500, these are the best headphones. That's what people have said. So if that's the standard, then we're going to test with headphones that are within that price range. And if it comes out that the LCD-1, despite their averageness, are better than those other headphones, then yeah, I'll say sure. In that respect, yeah, these headphones are the best sub $500 sounding headphones I've heard out of the ones that I've tested compared to. I would be happy to say that. I don't care. I've already paid for the headphones. It doesn't matter to me. But if it's not true that these headphones are the best in the sub $500 category amongst the other competitors, then that's a problem. That means somebody is being shady. That means somebody is telling lies, and that means somebody is trying to hide the truth. I have yet to find a review that actually goes through step by step trying to diagnose, to determine what the soundstage is, what the detail retrieval is, what the sound signature is. If you find one that actually goes in the nitty-gritty, let me know. But so far, I think these sound tests that I've been doing have been the only ones uploaded, the only ones that actually go into specifics. Okay, I hope that this has been of some help. We are going to start comparisons of the LCD-1. The first headphone we're going to compare to are the Hi-Fi Man Sundara, which are cheaper than the LCD-1. And we're going to upload the base comparison probably today for these two headphones. If you like what I do, if you enjoy my content, then please consider donating to me a couple of bucks a month on Patreon. Just $2 a month would help me keep saving money so that I can buy new and old gear to review for you. My reviews are much more thorough and much more precise than other reviewers on YouTube or online. I thank you very much for joining me. If you are a regular viewer but you haven't actually subscribed, hey, think about subscribing. We are well over 800 subscribers, and I would love to keep going along and see where we get by the end of the year. We have another month to go. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you want me to review a product I currently own, please click on the review request form in the description section, and I'll get to your request as soon as I can. I hope all of you have a wonderful, amazing rest of your weekend. Take care.